you tell us who you are and what your connection to the Office of the Public Defender is?
My name's Jack McMahon. I was one of the first hires of the Essex region of the State Public Defender's Office in 1967.
Okay. And what was it like for someone who couldn't afford an attorney before the establishment of the Public Defender's Office?
Well, there were two tiers of representation. Everybody who was charged with a felony was entitled to a lawyer in New Jersey. The lawyer was not entitled to any remuneration for representing those indigent defendants. The bar associations of each county handed out the indigent defendants as they were received in rotation to the lawyers, the members of the bar in that county. With the exception of those people charged with homicides, and that assignment was done by the judges of the county. Those lawyers who handled homicides were entitled to up to $1,000 plus expenses. The lawyers who were assigned to the other indigent felons or accused felons were entitled to expenses but no fees. They could also petition the court in open court for monies for expert witnesses, but that was up to the court and subject to argument by the prosecution if they objected to it. What happened was some counties, Essex being in the forefront, were overwhelmed with the assignments coming into the late 50s and early 60s. And lawyers in Essex County, I believe, were getting 3 to 4 assignments a year. And it didn't matter if you were a criminal attorney or if you were a civil attorney or if you worked for an insurance company or whatever you were doing, as long as you were a member of the Bar Association, you got those 3 or 4 assignments a year. And many lawyers felt that they were not qualified to handle those. So a system was set up here in Essex under Peter Murray, who was initially a prosecutor here and later the first public defender for New Jersey, to allow those lawyers who felt uncomfortable with the assignments to pay $50 and be relieved of that assignment. And so it would come to $150 or $200 a year for the average lawyer. Other lawyers, such as myself, who were young, and that was 50 years ago, recently out of law school, we would take those assignments for the $50. And the way Pete worked it, he reviewed the cases and he would give you 3 cases at a time, and it seemed that they had been gone over, and he had determined, well, 2 of these are pleas and 1 might be a trial. So what you were getting was $150 for a trial. That continued for, I guess, a little over a year. Governor Hughes all the time had been pushing for the state public defender, and then when the so-called denominated Newark riots occurred, it gave the impetus to get that through the legislature, and so that in the fall of '57, this office was established.
You mentioned the riots, rebellions of
Yes.
'67. You guys hung out your shingle in immediate aftermath of that. That was like July of '67. What was that like?
Well, many of the lawyers who, as I said, were taking these $50 cases were called in to Newark Municipal Court when the riots occurred. The first day was very quiet. First night was a little noisier in the court, and it progressed over the weekend. Those lawyers who were present, most of them, or good deal of them became the first public defenders here in Essex County. We were very, very fortunate in that the first deputy here in Essex was Leonard Ronco. Lenny had been a prosecutor, assistant prosecutor here in Essex, and very, very well respected. So that we came in and were accepted by the court personnel and by the judges to a large extent because of Lenny's reputation. And that made it a little easier for us. And it was somewhat chaotic in the beginning. We had our first office right across the street on 13th Avenue in the first floor and cellar of a tenement house. And there were 10 of us and a very small space, and we were encouraged not to come to the office, to stay here in the courthouse, use whatever rooms we could find here, or go back to our offices. At that time, assistant public defenders were permitted to have a private practice as long as they did no criminal work. In Essex, it was so tight in the amount of time we had to spend with our clients and in court that those private practices pretty much dissolved.
Okay. To your understanding, as a front, I'm going to go back to something else.
Sure.
Probably not going to make the movie. Do you remember the address on 13th Avenue? I'm not trying to make a place up there, but part of what we're doing a photo slideshow too, so if I can get, historic buildings.
It's the parking lot now.
Yes. Okay.
Just go out and take.
There's no building to take a picture
No,
of.
there's a couple of trees, but that's it.
Okay. It's the investigator in me. I always got to get the who, what, where, when, how, and why. I'm sorry. Okay. Your understanding as a frontline public defender at the creation, what was the mission of the agency then, and how did the mission change, or if at all?
Well, the mission of the Public Defender's Office was, and I believe still is, to provide a defendant in the criminal court with the same quality of representation that he or she would get if they could afford to go out and hire a lawyer. As a matter of fact, I think, personally, over the years, they have received better representation. But that's just from a public defender.
Expound on that. Why? Why is it better?
Why is it better? It's better because the resources that are available to us as trial attorneys, in so far as we are able to go out now and hire our own investigators, travel to interview witnesses, have an appellate staff at our call to go over any questions before they arise, things of that nature. Plus, one of the reasons I'm in this business, or was in the business, is I couldn't collect a nickel from anybody. I was the worst bill collector in the world. You don't have to worry about money as a public defender. That's a big, big plus.
Okay, can you compare New Jersey, from what research I've done, New Jersey was the first statewide public defender's office. Can you compare the New Jersey's public defender system to other systems, county-based system, assigned counsel? Discuss the drawbacks and, and benefits.
Well, New Jersey was the first statewide public defender. California, of course, had the first program that covered the entire state, but they were county offices. We learned a lot from California in the beginning. The drawbacks, I don't know many. And I'm not sure what the rest of that question was.
I was asking for a compare and contrast of different systems.
In my years as a state and a federal public defender, I ran into a lot of other systems. I don't know another state that could compare. I remember interviewing for federal public defenders down in the Virgin Islands, and we had a gentleman come over from Florida. He was a county public defender in Florida. And I asked him, and I saw one of the questions you might ask me, what is the highlight of your career as a public defender in Florida? And he told me, I got a desk from my secretary. So other states are not as into the system as we are in New Jersey, or always have been since '67.
We can branch two ways after that. I'll go this way first. I did read that you were the federal public defender for New Jersey, Virgin Islands, Delaware. So you hired a bunch of attorneys. What do you look for when hiring a public defender, and what makes a good public defender?
In hiring a defender, the first thing that I think you should look for is what have they been doing lately. Defender jobs today are a lot different. They are prized, especially the federal system, but in the state too. And you get many applicants who have not demonstrated before in their life that they cared one little bit about indigent defendants. So I look for that. I look for somebody who has a background that has done volunteer work maybe, or has been in a system that I can readily check on. Secondly, I don't want a crusader. I want somebody who understands that if they're going to make progress, it'll be slow. And there's going to be a lot of disappointments, losses. Prosecutors count their wins. I'm afraid public defenders may count their losses. I don't know. But somebody who has too high an opinion of themselves is not going to be successful.
Okay, and the other way that...
And can I add one thing? I don't think a defender or a lawyer of civil or criminal background ever learns anything from a case that he or she wins. You always learn something from a case that you lose. So don't be afraid to lose cases.
Okay, on that, what was your most joyous moment as a public defender? What was your most disappointing?
I didn't have any disappointments that I can think of. Joyous, seeing somebody in the office get a good win and understand why they got it. Sometimes we get wins that are accidental. We have no idea why the jury went the way they did. But somebody who knows what they did and did it well. But I don't think that you should ever weigh your disappointments against your joyous moments. You have to be even-keeled to survive. I've seen too many lawyers who, well, we had an attorney here in Newark who was an excellent attorney. He was also an excellent center fielder on our softball team. He lost his first 13 cases and handled it well. He won his 14th case and came in and resigned. Now, you can guess why he resigned. I don't know if you'd be right, but you can't let one case or two cases make you joyful or make you miserable.
You started touching on your coworkers, and we've been doing a lot of these interviews. We get a lot about camaraderie and culture and relationship. Talk about your coworkers in the public defender's office, and if you can, give me a favorite war story, unless that was the one you just gave.
No, well, coworkers, we started this office with 10 attorneys and our boss. Judge Leonard Ronco. He, by the way, preferred to be known as boss. We were to address him as boss in the office. We, in turn, were called by Mr. Ronco brothers. So I was Brother McMahon for the 7 years or so I was in the office, and that he was in the office. He left a few months before I did. Of the 10 attorneys, 2 of them passed away. The other 8, I know where all of them are, one exception. And we do keep in touch. And we formed some very, very significant bonds. And we all came out of it friendly. So it was a wonderful experience.
Okay. I was doing some research, and they had a history of the federal public defender in New Jersey that was published online, and read a little bit about you, and they said that you had the experience with the state public defender first. So after serving here, you went on to the federal public defender's office and other districts. What lessons, can you compare the two, and what lessons did you take with you from the state office of the public defender into your further career?
Well, the significant difference between the state public defender and the federal was the size and of the office, which was very small when we started the federal public defender's office, and the types of cases that we got. We got a lot more white-collar cases, a lot less violent crimes, although we had some. The experience of being in at the origination of the state public defender's office certainly helped in starting the federal defender office. And again, we came in with a bit of credibility because both Roger Lowenstein, who was the federal public defender initially, and myself had the state experience behind us. Roger wasn't in the Newark office at the beginning, but I think he was probably in after 3 or 4 years. And other than that, the work was the same. The judges were pretty much the same, and it was a great transition.
When I say the name Stanley Van Ness, what comes to mind? And when you frame your your answer, Stanley Van Ness, what?
Okay.
Say his name fully for us, because we're going to need that for the edit.
Stanley C. Van Ness was Governor Hughes's counsel when the office of the state public defender was established. And as I said, originally Peter Murray was the state public defender. The title of public advocate came along later with Mr. Van Ness. Peter Murray died, unfortunately, well into his first term, probably in the 3rd year of his term. And Governor Hughes was still in office and very wisely selected Stanley Van Ness to be the public defender for the state, later to become the public advocate. I think that title is kaput now, I don't know, but he was hands-on. We got to